In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And we're back for another episode of Doom to Fail, which that means I did the introductions properly. I'm Bars, joined here by Taylor. And Taylor, did you just change between recordings?
No, I took my, I took my sweatshirt off because I'm getting hot.
Oh, then we're trying to do wardrobe changes between recordings. Sweet. And we're back to a new topic where this is going to be a Taylor's joint, and she's going to play the regular game of me guessing what she's going to cover, and I'm going to be wrong.
I mean, you know what I'm going to cover because I covered the first half last week.
San Francisco Fire.
Yes.
Got it.
Um, so okay. I feel like I got like 70% of the way there, and then the book I was reading was just like so long that I was like, I want to die. I was listening to it at 2.5 speed last night, and I was like, this has to end. So I feel like my ending of this, I'm not gonna land this as much as I want to, but we'll talk about it. So before we go and kind of recap last week and talk about the fire, I'm going to send you a picture. Can I send it in the chat in this?
I don't know,
Here.
but if not, you can send through Slack.
I think it's a link. I linked it twice. I'm like doing that. I'm 100 years old. There's a link. Can you click on that link, please, and describe what you're seeing in that picture?
Complete and utter devastation and a giant fire that is black and white. There is clearly a trolley system running down the center of the city. One building, for some reason, is missing its entire facade, which seems bad.
Because of the earthquake.
Uh, that'll do it. But
hmm
the rest of the buildings are standing. I mean,
hmm
there's a lot of rubble in the street, but
Yeah. So this is okay. So this is like the day after the earthquake, and I'll share this on social media, but I think it's wild. So there's like a building missing a facade, so like a dollhouse. You can see inside and see the rooms. And then there are people sitting on the street, sitting in the rubble, kind of sitting in chairs, looking down a big hill, and the fire's just 2 blocks away. It's coming for them, you know? So I'm sure all of this area was destroyed as well.
yeah, but you don't know
So.
that. I mean, you don't know that it's coming for you when you're looking at it because fires change directions all the time.
No, I think you know it's coming for you. I'll tell you why a little bit because it came for everyone, pretty
Jeez. All right,
much.
Jill.
Um, Remember that the earthquake happened at 5:12 a.m. on April 18th, 1906. It was a 7.9 earthquake and it was like 42 seconds long, which is just so unbelievably long. I can't even imagine. So a lot of people died immediately. Chimneys fell, buildings collapsed, and then do you remember what happened to the fire chief by
He
chance?
walked home. He was sleeping in the living room, but he walked in to check on his wife, and he walked into an
Mhm.
open hole.
Yes. So he goes straight to the hospital. That is Chief Sullivan. He never wakes up. He
Jeez.
is like, he's there. They don't tell him what's happening. He dies a couple of days later. So the fire chief, he doesn't make it. But um, so there's like an acting fire chief that I'll tell you about in a second, but the fire chief dies. I also posted and sent you a text that I got a crowbar. Because I said I would have one.
But yeah, he did.
So
I'm proud of you.
um, thank you. And I was gonna bring it in here to show you, but then I was like, I should keep it under my bed. Duh, that's like where it needs to be. So I left it under my bed, so it's there.
I've also seen crowbars before.
I know, I know. So I have a crowbar, but so also I'll add shoes under there. And then the third rule is to make sure you have water because water is going to be a big problem in San Francisco, like literally right now. So almost immediately after the earthquake, communication is cut off between San Francisco and the rest of the world. The telegraph system, telephone system, everything is down, and the earthquake is pretty much over. It has a couple little aftershocks in the next couple days, but the earthquake damage is done. Like that is already done, and now it's time for the fire. So, and we talked about this before because of societies like in London in 1666, like there was just fire. That was the only option. Like you had candles, you had a fire in your house. And then in Chicago, there was like you have a gas stove, you have gas lights. And then now in San Francisco, some things have electricity, like the businesses usually do, but homes usually still have like gas lighting and gas for everything. So immediately there are a bunch of fires because gas mains are broke, chimneys fall down. There's little fires kind of all over the city, but a lot of them are put out by people because they're like in their house. So if you're like in your kitchen and you see a fire, like we've talked about this before, like you saw a big fire in like a window or like a mirror and you like had to go put it
Oh
out.
my God. Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah, but so that probably happened hundreds of times, but someone was there. So you're at your house, you do it. So there's no like, it doesn't spread. It's just you at your house. But then a lot of places where the commercial buildings where there's maybe like one night watchman, but not a lot of people. So those fires got out of hand like really quickly. Um, Most businesses did have electric lights, but it was mostly the gas like lines exploding that started all of the fires. By 7:30 a.m., so about 2 hours after the earthquake, all of the gas had been cut off and it would be cut off for 23 days. So for 23 days, they would not have access to gas. And what people will do later is they will build stoves out of bricks on the street. So people were outside cooking for about a month. They weren't allowed like back in their homes to like have open flames and do things like that. I also wrote, I have no idea how to do that. If you're
What
like
month
make a
was
sto
this?
it was April.
Okay, so it wasn't like freezing cold or
It's not
anything.
freezing. I mean, it's San Francisco, so it's like
I mean, San
foggy and like
Francisco gets pretty cold.
and damp. It's like damp, but like
Yeah, yeah.
not in the world. So within fires about 3 to 4 days long, there are 30 different fires about that kind of like converge like into one big fire. It destroyed approximately 25,000 buildings. 490 blocks were destroyed. And in today's money, the damage would be $8.5 billion. So it just like destroyed the city. In the beginning, the death toll that they were saying was about 300, but like that cannot be true. Like we talked about with like the other fires, like that's ridiculous. Like there's so many people whose bodies you're never going to find and people who you don't know were in a certain place or whatever. And especially like they were discounting the people in Chinatown for a long time. So now that they started to count them, then we think the number's a little bit higher. So obviously, like the death toll is probably closer to like 3,000, if not more. A lot of bodies were just like unable to be found because they were burned so badly. They're just like part of this rubble. The chief dies. But I do want to emphasize that Chief Sullivan, a lot of the good that happened during the fire and how prepared they were because of him. He made sure that his department, they were fully trained. They did a ton of drills. They were like ready to help. The problems that they had were like, water and like the fire was huge and all the things, but like the firemen were as ready as they could have been. And that was because of him. So now that now that he is essentially dead, he dies a couple days later, but they never talk to him again. There's going to be a new chief that is going to have to step up, and then the military is going to get involved as well. There are a lot of stories of things like, and I hate this. I think this is like the worst thing of like parents dying and like the kids being left alone, and like trying to figure out what to do. So like finding like a baby by itself. Like I hate that. It makes me so upset. But like,
Yeah.
you know, so like a lot of like that is happening. So right when it happens, when the fire starts, the last message that the Navy gets out of San Francisco to the rest of the world, like over the wires, they say, earthquake, town on fire, send Marines and tugs. And that's it. So rest of the country kind of starts to know that it's happening and they start to send relief, but they really don't know like the extent of what's going on there. Oakland is not on fire. San Francisco is. So people are able to like escape to Oakland. We'll talk about that in a second. So some stories, there's like some like anecdotal stories like from people who are like doing really brave things, really crazy things are happening to them as this fire is just like building and building. The author Jack London, do you know who that is? He wrote like The Call
That's
of the
familiar.
Wild about the
Oh
dog.
yeah, yeah, you go. Yeah, yeah.
So he lived 40 miles away, and Collier's magazine called him that morning and they said, can you go to San Francisco and tell us what happened? So him and his wife went to San Francisco and they kind of just like walked through the city as it was burning and like talked to people and like met people. And he wrote an article for Collier's and I listened to it today. It's available on Wikipedia. Someone did like an audio version of it. And some of the things that, he says is, San Francisco is gone. The earthquake is going to make this so much harder. So this isn't like a fire in a place where like things aren't already destroyed. You know what I mean? Like there's like the rippling of the streets and all the water mains are broken and all the gas mains are broken. So the town is already destroyed and then it's on fire, which makes it like that much worse, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and people were like, he said people were very calm. He saw someone offering $1,000, which is like a shit ton of money in 1906, to help bring like a wagon of trunks somewhere, and then no one would help him. And he eventually saw those trunks on fire. Like everything caught on fire. People were like, I was this like yesterday I was worth $600,000 and today I have nothing. And he went to a man's house and the man was like, this is my house. Like it'll be gone in 15 minutes. And he was like, this is my wife's china. He's like, look at my piano. Isn't it beautiful? And like, he knows it's going to be destroyed because of the fires coming, which is like horrifying and
Okay,
really
Taylor,
sad.
you have 15 minutes to.
Miles says save the piano
Okay, so that was what I was going to ask you. You have 15 minutes to save the three most valuable things.
in my home.
Yes.
I feel like I have like papers, like our passports and like our birth certificates and stuff. So I feel like I'd want to save those. I also feel like I thought about it like, I don't know, I feel like I would just like take a bunch of clothes and like underwear and like pajamas. Because like a lot of people are going to be like dirty for a really fucking long time after this because there's no running water. And water is um so important, thank you, Miles, and so rare that like you can only use it for drinking and cooking. You can't use it to like take a shower,
Yeah.
you know?
What I thought was I would take my laptop, cell
Mm.
phone, chargers, and papers.
Chargers is a good one to remember. Yeah.
Because that's like the
Okay.
only connection you can really have to the outside world. But
Hmm.
if we came together, then we'd be set.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It'll be
Okay.
fine.
We have
No
a
big deal.
plan. Deal.
Um, but yeah, so people are thinking, so there's some rumors, and this happens in every disaster, but there's rumors that like this is the end of the world. People are like, Chicago's on fire too, like every major city is on fire, like the world is ending, which like obviously is not what happened, but people were kind of panicking a little bit. Um, there are a couple hotels, obviously, and apartment houses that collapsed, and they're just full of bodies, and we'll just never know what happened to those people. I think we talked about that last week, but they're just they're trapped in the rubble, and then the fire comes, and we'll never know. One of the fires, so it's several fires that kind of converge into one. So one fire is called the ham and eggs fire. They tried to say that a woman was making breakfast, but I don't think that that's true. I think like that could have happened anywhere, but that ends up being one of the worst ones. I don't really know San Francisco geography, but this one is like south of Market Street, and that one ended up being the worst, but other fires were starting like simultaneously. People were doing the same thing that they did in Chicago, where they were like burying their stuff. So they would like bury all their china, bury their pianos, like try to like bury stuff so it would be safe from the fire. But a lot of that stuff was like so hot. And another thing that I think is it's science, but it's wild, is like the oxygen is one of the things that makes things catch on fire. So people had stuff in like a safe at their house, and they couldn't open the safes for at least a month because one organization tried to open theirs on May 2nd. So April 18th to May 2nd. And as soon as they opened it, everything caught on fire inside of it because it's still
Wow.
so hot inside. And then once the oxygen hits it, that's when it ignites. So they had to wait like at least a month to open things that were like super sealed, which I think is crazy. Um, it's the same story that we had heard over and over. We heard it in London, we heard it in Chicago, where people were like charging a lot for like their carriages and their cars and to get people out of the town. So the prices were like obviously increasing. Like, of course they would. Um, one person in the book I read, one person said like if he thinks that because in the Bible when in Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's wife turns around and turns into salt.
Why would I know that?
I don't know. It's like a famous story. But someone was like, I think that she didn't die from that. I think she died from carrying her trunk out of this town. Because like everyone was carrying all their shit. Like one guy was carrying his dead wife. People were carrying, all they could, just trying to like get away, like save their couple little things. But then that got me thinking, like, why would you have a trunk ever as your luggage? It's going to be super heavy and it's like a brick. So it's like, when did we invent luggage with wheels? And do you want to guess what year we invented that?
I mean, when did we invent wheels? Did we have wheels back then? Did they know that round things roll back then?
First, it was 1906. We've had wheels for like thousands of years.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Um, anyway, it was 1970, which I think is way late to figure out that you should put wheels on your luggage. A man named Bernard D. Sadow invented rolling luggage in 1970 and patented it in 1972.
Can you copy and paste his name and find out what his net worth is? 'Cause I bet it was like $3 billion.
I mean, like, I can't believe we didn't think of that earlier. That's real dumb, everyone, to have like a
Brilliant.
really heavy trunk. So, um, people are trying to just like get out with whatever they have. One fun story is the California Academy of Sciences on Market Street had a goddamn hero named Alice Eastwood. She was a self-taught botanist, and she had preserved a ton of plant specimens and had all of the science material and things there. And so she went in the middle of the fire, climbed over the all of the broken stuff from the earthquake and saved a shit ton of scientific research. She climbed up 6 stories through all the rubble, got as much as she could, and she lowered it down to her friends with a rope, and they were able to save it. She had to move it several times, but she saved a lot of scientific work then. So great job, Alice. People were rushing to the water. So Oakland was out on fire. So they needed to like get their ferries were just like moving people across the bay to places that like obviously were not engulfed in flames. Um, at the pier, it was women and children first. And that reminded me that Lindsay also my cousin Lindsay wrote to us because she said that like you kind of backed into being on the right side of that women and children first argument because like essentially it is based on like the patriarchal idea that women are nurturers, but also I'm for it because I want to be first on the boat.
If you want to be a true feminist, Taylor, you will sacrifice your life to save mine.
I will not. I will be first on the boat with my kids. So I have to grapple with that on my own.
Fair.
Um, Over in Oakland, the three major English language papers um, printed a paper to get together the next day. So they did like a joint newspaper to tell people what was going on. A lot of people went to their workplaces to save them because they were like, my house is okay, or my house is gone. So what do I do next? I'm going to go to my office and try to save it because this is my place of employment. And like, I don't want to be a dick, but like, I would literally never do that.
I mean,
Like, could you imagine like going to our old office and being like, I'm super worried about this? I'd be like the last thing I would think of.
no, I guess not. I guess like my relationship to my place of employment is different now than it was back then. So maybe I would now. But
Yeah,
also,
I just
everything's online, everything's in the cloud, everything's
right.
digital.
Like
So it's like,
now
who
I
gives a
would never
shit?
do that. But like I
Yeah, it's
get that
like
people did that then. But I just was like, oh my God, I would literally never risk my life to save my office.
we have to save the Staples chairs.
Yeah. No, like this is a $1,500 chair, but still. It has wheels. You could like push stuff out on it.
No, they clearly
Um,
did not have wheels on chairs. If it took that long to invent wheels on luggage, they definitely didn't have wheels on chairs until like
Actually, this is
2013,
no.
probably.
No, I think I'm gonna fact check myself. Um, who invented chairs with wheels? Because I think it's Charles Darwin.
Wait, it's Darwin?
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was Thomas Jefferson, but the internet is telling me now it's Charles Darwin. I'm going to Quora for no reason. Um, but it was a long time ago, like longer ago than Wheels on Luggage.
Well,
Now people are saying no. I thought maybe it was Thomas Jefferson. Either way, the history of the office chair. Anyway, well, maybe we'll get there. So
Taylor, why don't we like, why don't we just like put our heads together and just list off everyday items and figure out if they're better with chairs on it?
with wheels,
Wheels.
I love everything about that idea. I'm 100% in.
We'll guys, the next we'll do a bonus episode where we just list off every item we can
Yeah,
think of.
5,000%. So people were doing that. Like one photographer got a lot of really good shots of the city because he went to a photography store and the guy was like, take anything you want. It's gonna get burned anyway. So just like take it. I know you have not seen Pee-wee's Great Adventure, right? I mentioned it during the Alamo episode.
Yeah, I think I have.
So do you remember
Well,
the pets?
I haven't seen all of them, but I've definitely seen. I mean, I have. No, you didn't say. Was it Pee Wee?
Yeah,
Okay, maybe not. I'm talking about the other guy who, um, the other weird guy. He also got caught jerking off in a theater.
not Pee-wee?
He goes to death row.
Ernest?
Ernest. I'm confusing Ernest with Pee Wee. Okay, disregard.
Blair and I watched Ernest Saves Halloween or one of them recently, and it's still pretty fun. Um, so okay, so in Pee-wee's Great Adventure, he is somewhere and there's a pet store on fire, and he is like, I gotta see the animals. So he goes in and he's like opening the cages, and there's like monkeys and there's dogs and cats and like bunnies, and he's holding the fish tanks. Every time he goes in, he sees a cage full of snakes, and he's like, ugh, every single time. And he brings out all the animals out, and finally the last animals in there are the snakes. So he comes out of the burning building and he's holding two handfuls of snakes, and he's like, and he hates it. It's so funny. But during this great fire, two young men did save all the pets of a pet store, which was very nice. They broke the windows.
Yeah, that would be me. While you're saving the orphans from the orphanage, I'm saving the animals for sure.
Perfect. Um, I don't know if you remember last week we talked about the Palace Hotel, which was like the nicest hotel in town, and it
Yeah,
had survived.
Patty
It
Arbuckle.
was earthquake proof. Oh, really? Is that where that was?
I thought it was. Yeah.
Cool. But it burned down. They rebuilt it in 1909 and it's still there, but the original one did burn down, even though it did survive the earthquake. Um, Another kind of fun thing that happened is there was a bank called the Bank. A lot of the banks, I mean, they burned down. But the Bank of Italy was run by a man named Amedeo Pietro Gianni, and he was the owner, and he took all of the money to his house, which was like $2 million, so like a shit ton of money. He took it to his house. He had some men guard it, and he was able to give loans and take deposits. So he was really important in like rebuilding because he knew all of his customers, he knew what they needed. He was able to like, loan money to get more money. And in 2 years, the Bank of Italy was in a new building and kind of ready to go. And he pioneered branching. Um, so he was like one of the first people to like have like branches of his bank like around the city. And then in the 1920s, he merged with a smaller bank in Los Angeles and became the Bank of America, which is pretty
I.
cool.
Yep. I. So my. Well, not my first job, but the longest job I had before we worked together was at Bank of America, and so I looked at the
Nice.
history of it and was like, wild.
Pretty cool. Um, I don't know if you remember, but also there was an opera the night before the earthquake, and the singer Enrico Caruso, he's the one who saved his signed picture of Teddy Roosevelt. That's the thing that he saved. But he said, "I will never return to San Francisco," and he didn't. He died, like 20 years later. But he also looked awesome. So if you ever want to look up Enrico Caruso. He looks amazing. Um, some buildings were saved by locals. So there was a cathedral that was saved by people. And what they did is one guy climbed to the roof and he tied a rake to a rope, lowered the rake down, and they attached a hose to the rake and he pulled it up and soaked the roof so that it wouldn't catch on fire. As fire was kind of going through the air and like ashes and embers were flying through the air, they'd land on the roof and they would just chop off those shingles, just to like stop it as much as they could. So a lot of people were able to do that. People would soak sheets in wine and put them on their roofs just to like try to get the fire to stop. And another building that was saved was the Mint that had all the gold and like the money in it was saved by a few people who were very invested in saving it. And it was one of the only buildings to survive in like downtown San Francisco. The people were inside fighting the fire as it kind of came closer and closer. And when it ended, they, opened the doors to nothing, which was just like crazy. They were like in this building protecting it and then not even really paying attention. And then like everything was gone when they opened the doors. Um, so a little bit more about how they actually stopped the fire, because it wasn't rain and the winds didn't change. Like it was stopped, but not before it spread. So the hydrants and sewers started to dry up. Not all of them, but a lot of them did. And the active fire chief Daugherty. Daughtry. He was in charge, and he was trying to create fire breaks, but they were doing it like the absolute wrong way. They were using gunpowder and dynamite, and they were only knocking down buildings that were already on fire. But what you have to do is be like ahead of it by a lot,
Yeah.
you know?
Knock over the next building.
So they're knocking down buildings that were already on fire. So when they essentially bombed the buildings, all of the embers and the air would just set the next house on fire. So it would just like keep going, you know? So that really helped it like get bigger and bigger. There was a
Yeah, but it
general,
kind of works though.
well, it didn't work.
No, but no, no. If you play it out to its end conclusion, it would work because if you just did that all night long, eventually you would have destroyed every house, thereby extinguishing the fire when it hit the ocean.
Sure, sure, sure. If everything's gone, then there's no fire.
Well, there you go. So it would have worked.
Congratulations. Um, that
None
order
credit.
came from that order came from General Frederick Funston, nicknamed Fearless Freddie. He was in the military and he got the military involved right away. His superior, General Major Greeley, Major General Greeley, he was out of town but was slowly coming back. But in the meantime, this kind of crazy dude, Frederick Funston, he did a whole bunch of stuff like he had a he was the one who said to use a dynamite to only do houses that were already on fire. He had like finally gotten a message out because a lot of messages were not getting out. People were like, obviously like send wanted some messages to their family. Like I remember when there was a earthquake in San Francisco in the 90s, my Aunt Vianne, who lives there, called and said, "We're okay," right before the phones went out, you know?
Yeah.
And we were like so grateful that she was able to get through to us because I remember calling and she was like, "There's an earthquake, we're okay." And then the phones went out and we at least knew she was okay. But these people don't, some people will never know what happened to their family. And some people are just like waiting for anything. So telegraphs and mail was free, but it took a long time for it to like, or it took a while for it to get going. But they did eventually get, news over to DC. Teddy Roosevelt was the president. He asked people to donate to the Red Cross because this was 76 years before FEMA was spun up. So he asked people to donate to the Red Cross to be able to contribute. Taft was the Secretary of War, and he was, in contact with Funston and Greeley as well. So one thing that Funston did is he did kind of a pseudo martial law. Like it wasn't martial law. They would like say that later, but like it kind of was. So the order was anyone who was looting or, lighting a stove or a fire in a place they shouldn't should be shot to kill. It was a shoot to kill order. So a lot of military people came over and they were fully armed and being like pretty aggressive. They would like yell at people who if they had like a candle lit. They would force people to help with certain things. And it's like they would have probably helped anyway. They didn't need to do it like at gunpoint, you know? But
I
it
am
was
in favor of like when everything's fucked beyond all belief, dealing with like basic human greed or criminality or whatever. It's like, dude, yeah, just fucking shoot them. Like we have way too many normal bodies to bury. We don't fucking need to deal with this shit anymore. Like,
yeah. I'm sure officially there were very few deaths by gunshot, but there were probably more. Like you said, like I'm sure
yeah.
that happened more often. And like one of them they killed a Red Cross worker by accident, like people were riled up and scared. And so the wrong time to have a gun. Um, but people, they were kind of forced to help, which I also, again, think is kind of okay. Like they would have helped anyway. Like, what else are you going to do? Like help rebuild.
Yeah.
So, there was a fireboat called the Fireboat Leslie, and they tried to get water from the sea, but it was like the piers are wood. It was like hard to get to them. They did some pretty incredible things by like coupling hoses together, and some of the hoses would go for over a mile from the ocean to the houses, and that saved like a part of the city as well. They use sewer water, which is gross, but like, whatever you can
I
get
mean,
to not die.
it's 1900s. Like everything
Yeah.
probably smelled like shit anyways.
Exactly. I mean, it was like, I think one of the first things in the book that I read, The Longest Minute, was like everybody was wearing hats because you had to wear hats because like there's constantly like shit in the air, like there's everyone's burning coal, everyone's all these things. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, like no one smelled great. Um, but another thing they did is they stopped liquor sales almost immediately and they broke all the bottles of booze that they could. There was a distillery that had, because I don't want people to like get drunk and freak out, but also I'm like,
Yeah,
I really,
if anything,
I really need a
preserve
drink
the
right now.
liquor and
I
like
know,
ration it and like literally just give it out to people. Like, why would you?
I
It's
know,
the opposite.
I know. Um, there was a distillery that made whiskey, and they had like 100 barrels of whiskey, and they were like, "Excuse me, we basically have bombs. Like, we have this whiskey. Like, it is going to catch on fire. It's going to explode." So
Is that possible though? Because I was thinking about when you said the wine thing, it was like
I was
unless
thinking
it's
about
like
that too.
Everclear, like it's not flammable because the liquid content, the O2, H2O content has to be so significantly higher than the flammability of the liquor in there, right?
That's a good question, and I don't know. So please email us diptofellpod@gmail.com if you know, because I was thinking that too, but I was like, wine must have less of an alcohol content, and then like whiskey and like vodka and like hard liquor feels like that could be flammable more. Like, isn't that what a Molotov cocktail is? I don't know, all the things. But anyway, they moved all of the barrels of whiskey to a place that had already been burned so that it was like out of the way. Um, let's talk a little
Taylor,
bit about
I literally reached over while you were like talking, and I typed what into Google, and I was gonna follow with what is in a Molotov cocktail, and then I was like, that is for sure gonna flag me for the FBI. So I'm gonna go
I
ahead
mean,
and change.
you're on,
If anybody just happens to have that information handy or is willing to sacrifice their search history to the
no,
DTF,
I think that's just booze and then a rag
well, it's got to be more specific than that. It can't like what is it like? It can't just be like a
a
Mai
little bit of
Tai,
what?
right?
No, but it's like, but like,
A margarita,
no, yes, it has a salt rim on my Molotov cocktail.
little wedge of lime. That'd be so cute. That'd be such a cute
Glass
Molotov cocktail.
bottle. Oh, I guess it mostly has like gas in it, probably. Are
Okay,
Molotov cocktails legal? Is this question? Of course they're not legal. You're stupid. You were stupid if you're asking that question.
I mean the
Um,
components are legal if we figure out what's in it.
yeah, but you can bomb someone's house.
Yeah, but you
Dumb.
can own a Molotov. It's like owning a
I mean,
gun.
I own
It's
a Molotov
illegal to
cocktail.
own a
I
gun.
have bottles, I have rags, I have gas in my car,
We gotta stop recording our crimes.
Anyway, okay. Anyway, so another thing I talked about last week was like the relationship that the Chinese Americans had to the rest of the city. People in Chinatown didn't want to leave because they were afraid that they weren't, they were going to get deported, and they were right to be afraid. They had to, if they didn't have their papers, like they were definitely like in trouble. And a lot of people during the rebuilding wanted to just like not have a Chinatown and banned them from coming back to San Francisco proper. But that was ended up being overruled, and they were able to come back and build the Chinatown that is there today. People were definitely like scared. And then also, of course, like the soldiers who are just there in the under martial law are like raiding people's homes. So they raided Chinatown, which was like bummer to do
Yeah,
that. People started to make their own fire breaks. They had their own like committees. There were like people trying to figure out what to do because the communication is kind of all over the place. Everyone is like sleeping in parks. It gets really, really foggy. People are getting sick, sleeping on the ground. They have like one blanket. That's something that happens a lot in the other ones we talked about too, like outbreaks of cholera and the refugee camps, things like that. Everyone, though, is helping. Like if people are working, they're working. So people are like, they're helping in bakeries. They did not run out of food. They were able to like, feed a lot of people. Everyone was pitching in. At one point, someone had like there were like 2,000 chickens and like a I don't know, chicken farm that they like let loose, and everybody was like grabbing chickens, which I think is hilarious because also I would not know what to do with the
with a
chicken.
chicken. I mean,
I would
you
like
cut its
take
head
out
off, right?
its feathers. Yeah, and then what?
Yeah, you cut its head off. You pluck its feathers. I guess they didn't have fried chicken back then, so like you
They
probably
never
have
had
just
fried,
like
they've always had fried chicken. Um, Either way, people are pitching in, kind of helping each other. Another person who is a hero from this time is Lieutenant Frederick Freeman. He was on a boat, and him and his men stopped the fire from spreading on day 3. They went to like a big portion of the city and were able to save it. He worked kind of on his own with no direction, and so he really, really saved a lot of people, saved a lot of property, and later in his life during World War One, he was the captain of a ship that was torpedoed. And then he was so upset about it, he started drinking and going into addiction, ended up being dishonorably discharged and kind of living like a vagrant lifestyle. But in 1941, before he died, FDR pardoned him and gave him an honorable discharge because of all the work that he did during the earthquake and other great things he'd done before that. But he had like felt so guilty about being torpedoed. Um, but so people are working together and they are working really hard. Like 80% of the city is destroyed. But the mail was working by Friday, which is a big deal because it was like Tuesday to Friday. The mail was working. People were able to, talk to to tell their family around the country, around the world that they were safe. And the fire ended up stopping because, the people stopped it. They did the correct fire breaks. It didn't rain. It wasn't anything like that. It just like they ended up stopping. And also, obviously, like, it ran out of shit to burn because it was like it burned most of the city. In the aftermath, there was no water. So we just talked about this, like for bathing, so people were getting sick. People had to dig poop holes in their backyards. Like it was like a pretty bad like sanitation issue for a while. People were giving donations, but some of the donations had strings attached. Like there was a part of the city that did not have cable cars, and the cable car company was like, "We'll donate, $100,000 if we can build a car in this place where we couldn't have one before." Things like that. So a little bit of
Yeah.
corruption happened. Um, the judge, who was the judge of the Wong Kim Ark case that we talked about last time, he was actually the president of the American Red Cross at this time. So he was able to like he like invested a lot and like helped in San Francisco. The Empress of China tried to donate money and the people were like no, which is so racist and dumb. Take
Yeah,
everyone's money.
stupid.
Like I hate in a movie when someone's like, I'm too moral to take this check. I'm like, I'll take that check. Thank you.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like you're dumb.
I have no
Um,
principles.
yeah. Um, People were given tents. Some people had insurance. So some insurance companies paid out. A lot of the ones that were based overseas or on the East Coast never really paid out what they were supposed to pay out. Because a lot of it, and I don't know if I'm sure you remember this from owning a home in California, but like you have to have separate earthquake insurance from your
Oh
regular
yeah.
home insurance. And so people had to prove that their house was destroyed by the fire and not by the earthquake. And
Yeah,
like, how
I
do you
can
do
believe
that?
it.
You
It
know?
was like when I
So
was
some,
living in Florida and I knew people who were homeowners in Florida and they had to get separate hurricane or flood insurance from
yeah.
everything else. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was, yeah, expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of people ended up living in little housing camps. So they would build these like little like 200 square foot houses and then you could move them later. So you would like put down a down payment and then end up being able to move the house to maybe where your original land was or moving it. Um, all of the little houses were blue because the army had extra blue paint, which is kind of fun.
That's
There
cute.
was another story where like the army had all these boots that were the wrong color and the people didn't want to wear them, so they were in a storage room, so they just gave them to everybody, which is also cute.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, yes, so this is kind of where I stopped my research about like the rebuilding and such, but they rebuilt better than before. But I think that the thing that is so scary about this is just like one disaster after the other. And like a fire could happen anywhere, but like that earthquake was crazy and it's going to happen again. Like California is not safe. We're going to have other earthquakes. So this reminded me, my friend Morgan sent me a article about that tower that you had talked about in San Francisco that's falling or tilting, the
Yeah.
Millennium Tower. So I read an article about it. So it's called the Millennium Tower, and it's on Mission Street, which is one of the streets that was like totally destroyed in the Mission District. And it is like 6 inches off. And like the lady that in the article she sent me like figured it out because like she was like doing a putt-putt in her apartment, in her $3 fucking million apartment. And all of the golf balls would like go into one corner.
I mean, okay, yeah, you know what? Never mind. I was good.
What?
I was good. Well, because my house is also like not level, but like
Wait,
it's
but
a
you're on the
house.
first floor. You're on a
I
ranch.
know exactly. It's different when you're like 40 stories in the air. I get it. Yep, it's different.
Yeah, like if my house was tilted a little bit, meh, I'm on I'm on bedrock.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
More or
I'm not worried
less.
about it. But like this like gigantic tower um is oh my God, it's crazy.
Also, it's funny to
It
think that $3 million in San Francisco, that's probably like a starter condo. for anyone who lives there?
I cannot imagine. Like, so it's 58 floors, the whole building. Um, but they say they have 60 floors because they skipped 13, which happens, and 44 because people think the fours are bad luck. Have you heard that
Really?
before? Yeah, I don't know. I haven't
Uh,
really heard that before. But um, Jesus Christ, I'd be so fucking mad if I bought a $3 million
did they
condo.
fix it?
No, it's like they're trying to figure out how to fix it.
What's it called? Millennium?
Uh-huh. It makes you kind of want to throw up a little bit. Like even it makes me so upset and like so nervous.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe in like 3,000 years, your home will be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and it'll be a landmark for people to visit.
But also like there's no way that if there's an earthquake that isn't toppling over literally immediately.
I know. If I was a neighbor, I'd be like, I want a refund.
Yeah. And you can't, you know? Like,
Not
oh God, I
good.
hate it so much. Like I really like honestly my hands hurt. You know, like you get nervous and your hands hurt talking about things. Like I just hate it so much I don't know what to do. Um, so yeah, I mean I know that, this it was a good time to like Industrial Revolution time is a good time to start over on a city so they could build better because like they had done things like, we should have stronger construction, we should not build everything out of wood, but like they hadn't retroactively put those laws in place. So if you have to start over, at least you can start over better. In some cases they did, some cases they didn't. Some people just wanted some place to live like really quickly. Those camps were open for years. People trying to figure out where to go. Like in all these disasters, rich people could figure it out, but poor people, they have fucking nothing, What are they supposed to do? But now there just seems to be a lot of tall buildings in San Francisco, which makes me nervous.
Man, this millennial thing.
I hate it so much. I was in New York. So the week that this was 13 years ago, but the week that we had our wedding reception in New York City, we had to move it because there was a hurricane. So there was like hurricane time, so we had to cancel our reception, do it a couple months later. It was fine. But that week there was also an earthquake, and I was on the 38th floor of a building, and I felt my desk go bloop bloop, and I was like,
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
nothing
It's
to do with
interesting
that.
too because California has like probably some of the strictest regulatory guidelines for building things, and you think that like how was this able to happen?
I mean, in 1906 or this Millennium Tower.
No, the Millennium Tower.
Yeah, no,
Also, like
100%.
it's got to be like a developer's worst nightmare to have like a bunch of millionaires living in your building when your building like fucks up really badly because like they're going to sue you into oblivion. And it sounds like that's what they're doing right now.
But they're not gonna like what are they and like the woman in the article I read, I'll share the article, but like a like tech bro bought the apartment above her for like $15 million and he was like, I don't care that it's tilting, I like the view. And I'm like, you're the worst.
I mean, that would be the dream to be that rich. Taylor, you
Would
might say he's
not
the worst, but we would both love to be in that position.
I would not want to live there.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to live there. How
No,
scary.
I'm on a no from that.
Guys, just live on level land. I have no idea how we got to this conclusion in the San Francisco fire episode, but that is my takeaway.
I think we both live in one-story houses and I'm happy that we do.
Amen. Please don't move. Sweet. So that is we got San Francisco, we got Chicago wrapped up. I'm sure there's plenty more fires
I
awaiting
know. Well, I'm
us.
gonna start doing Women's History Month next week, and I'm very excited to have some fun stories. But if you know women's history, you know there is a very important fire that I will talk about. But I was going to do it next week, but I'm just so tired of talking about fires that I'm going to maybe do it the week after.
Good. I don't know what that is.
I'm sure if you know, you know, but I'll tell you later.
I will probably know after you tell me because you know that I don't, you know me, I don't connect dots real quick. It takes a little bit for it to marinate, and so I'm sure I'll know when you tell me. So,
Okay, cool.
but yeah, that was awesome. Thanks for sharing, Taylor. We got our episodes in for the week. Sorry for the late start, per usual. It was my fault, but we got them taken care of.
I re-released Mutiny on the Bounty today, so there's something out there.
Enjoy some mutiny.
Yeah.
Cool. Again, write to us at doomsdayfallpod@gmail.com. Find us on the socials at DoomNFL Pod. We're trying to become rich and famous, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, tell your
I think
friends.
y'all should want us to be rich and famous because some
We
of y'all
really
know
like doing
us.
this. Yeah,
We
come
like
on.
doing this. It's like
Come on.
and like as our friends, we'll give you VIP passes to our live shows at Madison Square
1000%.
Garden
Email us today with your name and you will be on the list forever.
forever. Says a lot. Sweet.
Cool.
Anything else
Thanks, Lars.
before we shut off?
That's it. Just that those fun things from Morgan were fun. And she gave me some other good ideas of things to cover. And a couple people have sent us Instagram messages of like some true crimey things. So I'll make sure you see them.
Love it.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, go ahead and cut things off and